Today we're going to talk about energy, particularly two types of energy, fossil fuels and renewable energy. Let's begin. Energy is everything. Anytime you take a walk, drive in a car, blink, grow a flower, turn the light on, energy is being used. Energy can be understood as the capacity or the ability to do work, whether that means making something or someone grow, change, move, heat up, or even cool down. If we have energy to use, we can make things, including ourselves, move and grow and change, and adapt, and be more comfortable, and have fun. But where does this energy come from? And what does energy look like? Well, it depends on who you're asking. For humans, we get energy from food, especially food and plants we eat that are high in protein, like lentils and beans. Plants get their energy from the sun, water, and carbon dioxide in the air. This is called chemical energy. Now, what about the things people do, like heating our homes or switching on lights, making electronics in a factory? How do we get energy to make all of these things happen? In the UK, there's a network of power lines and pipelines that help bring energy, and specifically electricity and gas, into our homes and buildings. But where does the energy in these networks come from? And what about the energy we use to get around, to power cars and to fly planes? Now, the answer to this is a little bit more complicated and involves some of the things you may have learned in history, science, and geography. For centuries, people used boats and animals like horses and camels to move between villages, towns, and even across the world, and to transport and trade goods like spices. People also used the sun and wood to make fire to cook food and keep warm. But in the past 300 or so years, we've been relying more and more on energy from a range of sources called fossil fuels. Before 2019, the majority of energy sources we used in the UK were fossil fuels, particularly oil and gas in more recent years. Fossil fuels are sources of energy that mainly come in the form of oil, gas, and coal. They are created from decomposed biological matter or the decomposed remains of plants and other living things that were around millions of years ago. It takes a very long time for fossil fuels to be created. Animals and plants decay and are buried below layers and layers of rock over millions of years. This biological matter changes and forms oil, gas, or coal, depending on the type of material and the amount of heat and pressure placed on it. Our reliance on fossil fuels progressed during the Industrial Revolution. As you may have learned in your history lessons, the Industrial Revolution was a period of time between the mid-1700s and mid-1800s where the world saw major changes in the way products, like food, were made, and how we lived our lives. The Industrial Revolution saw the building of factories, the development of machinery, including mechanical looms like the flying shuttle, which helped weavers, as well as the invention of the steamship, which made travel from the UK to North America quicker, and therefore made trade for some countries easier. With these factories and machinery, food, clothes, and other products could be made faster, so there was more of everything. Life completely changed during the Industrial Revolution. Cities were developed. People could buy the things they needed more easily, and they didn't need to make everything themselves. In many ways, living standards dramatically improved, but in the process, people started to rely more on fossil fuels, particularly coal. The Industrial Revolution started in the UK and was propelled by coal. All those factories and machineries, many were only able to function from burning coal. In the UK, coal mining was an especially big industry that employed many people and kept many families fed, especially in areas like the north of England and South Wales. Although our lives are quite different now than they were in previous centuries, one thing remains the same. We still rely heavily on fossil fuels to heat our homes, make food and clothes, travel, and to do all sorts of things. In the UK, we don't rely on coal as much as we used to. Nowadays, we mostly use oil and gas. Unfortunately, our reliance on fossil fuels is not a happy story. Both the extraction and use of fossil fuels impact the environment and communities around the world. Firstly, to access fossil fuels, we need to extract or take out oil, gas, and coal from deep underground. The entire process uses a lot of energy and can cause air, water, and soil pollution, which can harm local communities. For example, for a long time, coal mining was a source of income for many families across the UK. However, coal mining is dangerous and exposes miners to substances that are bad for health. Nowadays, our reliance on gas and oil can put certain communities at risk. In North America, for example, pipelines used to transport oil from one place to another can contaminate soil and air quality, which can affect the well-being of communities living in the area, like the Wet'suwet'en First Nation, who have been protesting against a pipeline that the Government of Canada have wanted to build in their community for over a decade. Once we extract oil, gas, and coal from the ground, we need to burn them to get energy from them. Burning fossil fuels releases carbon dioxide, a greenhouse gas, into the atmosphere. Greenhouse gases are a type of gas that trap heat into the atmosphere. The most common greenhouse gases are carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, and methane. We actually need greenhouse gases to make sure our planet is warm enough to live. But when there are too many greenhouse gases, too much heat is trapped in the atmosphere, and things start to get complicated. Too much heat in our atmosphere impacts all living things on our planet. Firstly, the changing atmosphere causes average weather, also known as the climate, to change around the world. Even just last year, we've seen record heat waves in Canada and intense rainfall in the UK, Germany, and China. Changing weather causes a whole host of problems and knock-on effects. Many people across the world are currently experiencing the impacts of the climate crisis, including flooding due to rising sea levels from rising temperatures, droughts, which affect agriculture, and more extreme weather events like dangerous hurricanes and storms. You may have seen the recent pictures of wildfires in Canada, Turkey, and Greece, and roads and buildings washed away by sudden downpours in Germany. People living in poverty in the UK and globally, Indigenous communities, and people of colour around the world are often worse affected by the impacts of the climate crisis. On average, individuals around the world who experience the impacts of the climate crisis the most, including young people and those not yet born, are individuals who have contributed the least to the crisis. This is called climate injustice. This brings me to another very important point to consider about energy and fossil fuels. Not everyone is using loads of energy from fossil fuels in their everyday lives. A few large companies around the world are responsible for a large proportion of energy use and burning of fossil fuels, not individuals or families. Even if we look at individuals, all individuals in the UK and across the world aren't contributing equally to the climate crisis. In fact, the richest 10% of the world are responsible for over 50% of total global carbon dioxide emissions from burning fossil fuels. This may be because they own bigger homes that need more heating, cooling, or they fly more on airplanes that use fossil fuels. It is important to acknowledge the inequalities in how we experience the climate crisis and how people contribute to the climate crisis so that we can contribute not only to a cleaner and greener world, but a fairer and happier one as well. Luckily, there are many things that can be done and are currently being done to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels and subsequently protect people and the planet. In the UK and in many countries around the world, there has been a massive push to generate or create energy from renewable resources. This is known as renewable energy. Remember how I said that before 2019, the majority of energy we used was from fossil fuels, and particularly oil and gas? Nowadays, a lot of the energy we use is renewable energy. In the first few months of 2021, more than 41% of the energy we used came from renewable sources. In fact, for nearly 2 years now, in the UK, we have been generating more renewable energy than fossil fuels. People all over the world have been generating energy from renewable sources for centuries, for example, through windmills or water mills, but now we're doing it on a much bigger scale. Renewable energy is derived from renewable sources, meaning sources that we can replenish or sources that don't run out. This includes the sun, wind, waves in the ocean, fast-moving water like waterfalls, and heat generated near the Earth's crust and found a few meters from the ground. Oil, gas, and coal aren't renewable because they take millions of years to form. We generate renewable energy in various ways, by taking energy from the sun through solar panels, capturing energy in the wind or energy in moving water through turbines, or harvesting heat from underground through hot water in the heat pumps. In the UK, we mostly generate renewable energy from the wind and fast-moving water. When you are next out and about, look up and see how many solar panels you can see, or count the wind turbines you pass if you are on a motorway trip. Renewable energy doesn't release greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide when we use them, which means they don't generally contribute to the climate crisis. A massive transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy is taking place on the UK's North Sea coast, an area where lots of fossil fuels are extracted. Through the North Sea Transition Deal, communities across the North Sea coast in the UK will be supported to transition to renewable energy generation to contribute to tackling the climate crisis. In order to stop the global climate from changing, individuals, communities, and governments around the world are aiming to make all our actions and activities net zero. Net zero means achieving a balance with how much carbon dioxide our actions release into the atmosphere and how much carbon dioxide we're able to take out of the atmosphere through various means like tree planting. Scientists urgently warn that we need to reach net zero emissions as soon as possible in order to stop rising temperatures across the globe, which contribute to the climate crisis. Sourcing all the energy we need from renewable sources will help us achieve net zero emissions from our actions and activities. Even though net zero goals have been declared across the world, we have to be careful about letting governments and businesses put more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, because the technology to then remove this is still being developed. While scientists are working on ways to remove carbon from the atmosphere, it's considered very risky and uncertain, so we shouldn't rely entirely on new technology. It's great that in the UK, the government is committed to achieve net zero by 2050 and 2045 in Scotland. However, many people believe we can do more. The official UK Climate Change Committee has said that the government needs to act more quickly on delivering its existing climate promises. We urgently need to focus on making sure no greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide are released into the atmosphere and focus on generating and using more renewable energy as soon as possible. Another great thing about renewable energy is that we can generate renewable energy in any country or area, unlike fossil fuels like oil, gas, and coal, which are only found in certain parts of the world. The geographical limitations of accessing fossil fuels have caused global conflicts, like wars, which have harmed and displaced many people in countries due to our reliance on fossil fuels. It's important to also think about the social benefits of switching to renewable energy, like reduced air pollution, so we can make our planet greener, but also communities and society healthier, happier, and safer. While renewable energy can support us to protect people and the planet, there's still a few issues with generating renewable energy that we need to figure out. It's not always possible to get a lot of energy from the sun. For example, as we know, certain parts of the UK are often quite overcast or rainy. Similarly, we're not always able to harness energy from the wind if it's not particularly windy. Scientists and engineers are working on creating ways to store renewable energy from the sun, wind, and water so that we can gather a lot of energy on a sunny day or a windy day and save it for an overcast day. Although there are lots of exciting advances in how we store renewable energy, including in batteries and by converting it to hydrogen, more work is